On the contrary, it was elementary, my dear Danson. Elementary.
Danson?
Dan Watson.
Oh,
Danson.
okay.
Trying to do my best Sherlock Holmes impression that I can. Yeah. Hello everybody, welcome to RandB Reviews. I am Rob, and once again I'm joined by my guest reviewer, Dan. You can't get enough of this channel, huh, Dan?
Of course.
Yeah. Well, welcome back, great to have you. And I was just telling him, it's good that you've got me for a friend, because I've been exposing you to all kinds of different things, right, Dan?
Right.
Today we're going to be reviewing The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Basil Rathbone, and you told me up until recently you had never seen or heard of Basil Rathbone or any of his Sherlock Holmes movies, is that right?
That's right.
And what's interesting is we recently saw Murder on the Orient Express, and you had never seen the original 1974 film or read the book when we reviewed the remake.
Of course.
So I'm glad you got me for a friend. Exposing you to some culture. Now, for those of you that don't know, the movie that we watched, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, is actually the second film Basil Rathbone did with his friend Nigel Bruce's Dr. Watson. He did 14 films. Well, they did 14 films together between 1939 and 1946. And they also played the characters on radio at the same time. Yeah. So, basically, Basil Rathbone, many people erroneously say that Basil Rathbone was the first Sherlock Holmes. That's actually not true. There was actually a 1900 movie called Sherlock Holmes Baffled. That was like I think it was like a 1-3 minute little thing you watched through a machine. That was first. And in the 1920s, during the silent era, there was a popular series of Sherlock Holmes films with an actor named Ellie Norwood. And before Rathbone became Sherlock Holmes, in the early 1930s, an actor by the name of Clive Brook did a couple films as Sherlock Holmes in Hollywood. And in England, a stage actor named Arthur Wantner played him in a series of films, I believe 5 films, before Rathbone came along and entered the world of Sherlock Holmes. You told me right before we hit record that the only Sherlock Holmes that you're really familiar with is Robert Downey Jr.
The first movie that I saw that actually came out first time with Robert Downey Jr. Pretty much that Robert Downey Jr. is one of those supposedly Sherlock Holmes that supposedly does his own stunts, but I'm not really too sure. But then again, he keeps on envisioning what he's going to do before he's going to do it. With Basil Rathbone, he kind of thinks it over, tries to analyze stuff, and supposedly come up with an answer right then and there. But pretty much, he's an interesting Holmes. He's really good. This movie I haven't seen, and kind of saying that he really figures Moriarty out pretty much at an instant, but he really needs to think it over and kind of process what Moriarty is going to do next. So I think he's very interesting.
Well, I'm glad you ended up liking Basil Rathbone as Sherlock Holmes. Moriarty's trying to come up with a plan to break Sherlock Holmes, so Holmes ends up getting 2 cases that he's trying to solve at the same time, and Moriarty is somehow involved. It seems like there's a lot going on, but I think everything blends very well. Now, getting to Rathbone's portrayal, you said you found him interesting. I love his Sherlock Holmes. He really embodies Sherlock Holmes very well, from the tone of his voice to the way he moves. And, you know, in this film, he kind of gets portrayed as, you know, somebody who's constantly likes to be working on something, whether it's cases or whether it's, like, in the case of this movie, experimenting with, you know, in this case, flies, for example. He's doing an experiment with flies. But he's very good here. I love his Sherlock Holmes. And Nigel Bruce plays Dr. Watson. And Nigel Bruce oftentimes gets accused by Sherlock Holmes fans for being a bit of a, pardon my French, a bit of a dumbass. While he's often portrayed as somebody just as smart as Sherlock Holmes, like in like the Jeremy Brett TV show, for example. But I think the two of them have a very good chemistry together. I could definitely tell in real life they had a very good friendship going on. And what was your exposure? What would you think of Nigel Bruce as Dr. Watson, Dan?
I would say he actually knows a lot more than he brings onto the character. So he kind of portrays like one of those slow, but soaks in all the information and kind of deduces everything with Holmes, but he kind of stumbles along kind of ways.
Yeah.
But he's smart as a tack.
Yeah, I think in this movie he's more smarter than he is later on. Later on in the series, he's kind of dumbed down. But something I noticed with this film that I probably haven't noticed before is Watson is kind of us, because Holmes is giving all this information, like, and you're like, well, what does this mean? What does this mean exactly? Or how did you deduce it? He kind of represents us on screen, because Holmes is doing all these things. He's picking up things, messing with things, and we're like, what's going on? What does this have to do with what's going on? And you know, he kind of represents us. George Zucco played Professor Moriarty here, and I thought he was a really good. I loved his voice. I loved the opening scenes between him and Basil Rathbone as Holmes. There a lot of dark humor and a lot of rivalry between the two of them. And you know, I loved him. I found him to be a very creepy villain. What about you?
Oh, he's excellent as a very interesting villain, and he kind of portrays the villain to the T.
What did you think of the movie itself?
The movie itself was pretty interesting. Dating back into the 1930s is kind of a long ways, but you kind of get into the culture and all the background stuff and all the fog machines kind of comes into play with all this stuff.
Yeah, you definitely walk into like a London where it's foggy at night.
Yeah.
Perfect for mysterious business. But I'd say this is definitely one of the better entries in the series, and like I said, I was on the edge. I would have loved to have seen a little bit more Moriarty, like in the middle of the movie, but I mean, you do get to have all these cases going, and you have to put some focus on that. But I thought it was a suspenseful movie. I thought it was well made. I love the use of shadows and camera angles. Like there's one scene in Holmes' study where instead of having it up facing Rathbone and Watson when they're discussing a case, they have a low angle, and I thought that was very interesting because you didn't see that too much in movies from the period. And I thought, like I said, the music was very good and suspenseful. The only thing, there were a couple plot holes I would have liked to have learned more about without giving anything away, that I wish I could have, seen get resolved more. A flaw that I had with this movie is Ida Lupino plays Anne Brandon. I didn't really like her performance. She's attractive, but she seemed like she was just going through the motions, and to me she looked bored. And there was a few times where I felt like there were a few scenes that could have used a little bit more feeling in the performance. I don't know if you felt that way at all.
I thought she was kind of staring off into the distance for some reason, like she wasn't portraying her own character. But other than that, to me, she kind of looked like she was kind of bored with her character.
Yeah. But I would definitely recommend this movie. And if you love Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock Holmes, or if you're like me and grew up watching Jeremy Brett play him on TV, yes, the movie is in black and white, but I think Basil Rathbone must be looked at. He's excellent as Sherlock Holmes, and he really disappears into his role. What about you?
I would have to agree with you. He really disappears into his role.
And now we got to get you to watch the other 13 movies, right? Yeah. All right, well, that's our review of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, starring Basil Rathbone as Sherlock Holmes and Nigel Bruce as Dr. Watson. And a few years ago, I actually reviewed the whole series, so if you want to, I'll try and put a link in the video so you can check it out. If you want to look at some other movies that are in theaters or something that you could watch in the comforts of your own home, come and check out the main page, look at what we got. And if you're interested, consider being a subscriber. Should be a subscribe button at the bottom, and I'll also put the logo in the corner. And of course, feel free to leave any comments that you have about the video or about the channel in general. And Dan, are you glad that I exposed you to Basil Rathbone's Sherlock Holmes?
Yes, you did.
See, I'm making you a more cultural person, right? All right, well, Dan, thanks again for stopping by, and I'm sure you'll be back very soon.
Yeah, very soon, indeed.
Not sure what we'll be doing yet, but I'm sure you will.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much for watching.